What is going on, everybody, and welcome inside the Browns beat. It is another beautiful Wednesday night as we get to the last Wednesday night of March. And that means, Fred, this is the last Wednesday night before we get to draft month because the draft at the end of April in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so we've got obviously plenty to talk about, a little bit more Browns news happening kind of as we speak. Nothing major, but it's happening anyways. And we're going to get to all of it. We're going to talk about that. Fred, I want to take a little bit of a nostalgic walk down memory lane with you for some Browns drafts of old. And we'll get into your topics too. If you're joining us live here tonight on the OBR streaming network, like our buddy Chris here says, hey, Mike and Fred, like our buddy Chat _username, gentlemen. And a tip of the cap to you. Get in the comments if you're joining us live. And if you got questions, ask them. We'll try to do our best to get to them. If you got topics you want us to cover, go ahead and throw those out there. We'll do our best to get to those as well. But you can see here, I'm your host, Michael Keefe, joining me, my co-host, Fred Greetham. And Fred, I feel like March is a month that usually kind of slogs along, like it takes forever. Felt like March really kind of rolled through, and we're here. We're about a month away from the NFL draft.
Yeah, less than a month now. I think the weather, you get teased, you get a 70-degree sunny day, and then it's back to snowing, 2-3 days later, and that's it in Ohio. Battled it my whole life, trying to play baseball and get all excited to get out and play, and then it's blizzard. But that's life in the big city, as Kevin Stefanski always said. So
I remember our varsity baseball coach, Fred, because I'm going to guess you had to do the same thing. When I played baseball, we had to a lot of times we had to do practice in the gym. And our coach would be hitting lasers. I was an infielder, be hitting lasers at us across the hardwood floor. There was like no friction to slow it down at all.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. In college, you go to Florida for 2 weeks and play 15 games, then come back and have to go back in the gym for 3 weeks, and it's like it kind of negated everything you did in Florida. But yeah, it's changed a lot, up this way. I know most of the schools have tarps and they play almost every day anyway, other than snow blizzard, but life goes on. I remember those days were brutal, not even trying to catch fly balls in the gym off of a ceiling with lights. It's like, this is not at all realistic,
Correct.
So whatever you had to do, you had to keep us busy somehow. So yeah, as far as, I was just thinking, I think there's 4 Wednesdays before the draft. We'll have shows 1st, 8th, 15th, 22nd. Then they draft on the 23rd. I mean, the way free agency's gone, Mike, it's been boring. I mean, they've done some things that they needed to do, address the offensive line, but that's kind of not exciting. And then addressing the special teams. I think most people want to see the sizzle, whether it be wide receiver, quarterback, anything like that is a little more. Tight end even falls into the somewhat exciting, but not getting the blocking tight ends. So, I think now the way it's set up is the draft, is the best hope for the Browns to get some weapons. I mean, I expect to be able to talk and see some of the workouts before the draft, because Todd Monken's a new head coach. They can start April 6th. It's a week or 2 before OTAs can normally get started. So although they start out, I think, inside in classroom, they might have some practice. We might be able to even get out and see them before the draft. So, it's getting close. Within a month, we'll start seeing this. And that's really when we're going to know what the Browns are doing. I thought they would tip off, I think I mentioned here, when free agency started, how they looked at the quarterback, for example. We would at least get leaks saying they tried to get Malik Willis, but they they got outbid, or they were in on Kyler Murray or Tua or Anthony Richardson or whoever, but you haven't heard anything. So, I mean, I'm not saying they didn't inquire, but normally agents or somebody leaks out information. We all remember what happened with in the Watson deal. It leaked out. The Browns flew to Houston, were in on that, and Baker got all upset and demanded to be traded. So, it, that's
I
what
love,
I'm.
I love, Fred. I love how it is something I appreciate because that situation is just the worst. It's something I appreciate about every time you bring it up. Every single time you always remind the people, and I appreciate it. I'm not even being sarcastic. You always remind the people that once there was
Light at the
word
end
that
of
they
the
were
tunnel.
looking, Baker
Light at
was
the
the one
end
that
of the
asked.
tunnel. You had 80% of that contract is expired. So, yeah, there's money to be paid even when he's gone. But this is the fifth and final year of his contract. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. But I guess what I was trying to get around long winded is saying we thought we would, okay, they are trying to get another quarterback, another starting quarterback. And I don't think, at least to date, they have kind of indicated to us their thinking is that they're not. They're they're planning on going with where they're at, with one exception. We don't know what they're thinking in the draft. I'm assuming they're not going to take a quarterback at number 6. And if you don't take a quarterback at number 6, then he's not your starting quarterback. You don't take a guy in the second round, third round. They might win the job, but you don't say that's the guy we wanted to be our starting quarterback, or you'd take him 6.
Yeah, right.
And so you get this little throw out there by Dan Orlovsky saying Ty Simpson is better than Francisco Mendoza. Where'd that come from? And then he backed it up and said he had 12 to 15. I don't know if he said GMs, but front office types that said, I don't disagree with you. So maybe we saw last year how the NFL personnel people had very different views than what the media did. Because if you listen to the media, Shedeur Sanders was, if he wasn't the best quarterback, he was number 2, and he was going to go, in the first round, probably in the top 10. The NFL looked at him and said, he's a 5th round talent, in our opinion, right now. So it will be interesting. What do you What do you think about that? I mean, as far as this Orlowski and the Simpson camp,
It's the same stuff every year. There's a lot of people that work in NFL front offices. Lots of people, not just GMs, not just assistant GMs, not just scouts. Lots of people work in NFL front office. So when Dan Orlovsky says, 10 or 15 front office types, okay. There's a lot of idiots that work in NFL front offices that aren't making any decisions about player personnel. So
you can find them. You can call through your.
I generally like Dan. I'm cool with him. I usually like him. I don't, he doesn't. I don't always agree with him, but like, it's to me, it feels like ESPN went to him and said, "Hey, we need a little like quarterback drama going into this because nobody's talking about the quarterbacks. So can somebody please just bring up a ridiculous quarterback thing, just so we get some clips to show online." That's what it was. That's all it was. Because at this point, nobody in their right mind would say, yes, I would take Ty Simpson before I would take Fernando Mendoza. Not a single human being on the planet, except for Ty Simpson's dad, would say that. And even he might be like, maybe I have to see a little bit more, Ty. Anyways, Fred, I want to pause on this. We can come back to this. But we've got a special guest. We've got a very special guest. I didn't even tell you this because I didn't know it, because I didn't know this was happening until about 2 minutes ago, which I don't know how long ago that was London time. But about 2 minutes ago here, I got a message from our good buddy and fellow our OBR cast member extraordinaire. We're going to bring him in from London because it's really not all that late anymore because like the way we are weird with daylight savings and all that. So he's only a few hours ahead of us at this point. We're going to bring him in right now. Welcome on in, Jack Duffin. I don't know where he is. There he is, inside the Browns beat. Jack, what's up, buddy?
Literally, I was probably 5 minutes from going to sleep, and I just saw the news come out from Field Yates that it's like they've changed the contract on Myles Garrett. So a real surprise.
So really quickly, this just came out just minutes ago, but Field Yates reports that the Browns and Myles Garrett have agreed to restructure his contract, and essentially the restructuring moves his option date. His option date was supposed to be right towards the beginning of the league year, and now his option date moves back to September. And so, Jack, why don't you kind of explain what that means to everybody?
Yeah. So I wrote an article only yesterday that said tomorrow, that's it. If they don't do something now, Myles Garrett getting traded is just off the table this year. Can't happen. And then because today he was due to get his option bonus fully guaranteed, a significant chunk of that paid. We're talking over 29 million. Just took it off the table. It was done. He's getting that money. Put it in to bed. We'll talk about trading it next year. What they've done is moved that payment date from the 25th of March to 1st, 2nd of September. Let's say the 1st of September. Grand scheme of it doesn't matter. There's talk of, this creates salary cap space. The first year it creates any salary cap space is 2029. This is not about salary cap space. The only one thing this is about is opening up a window to trade Myles Garrett. And that moves the conversation from it had to be done effectively yesterday or as late as today, or it was game over. That conversation now can roll on all the way to September. So very much and you could have listened to me last year, every day, as soon as the trade request came in, I just laughed it off. I said, less than 1% chance it's never happening. I now set the line at 50-50 with probably, I would take that it's more likely to happen than not. This year, he's traded potentially after June 1st, so they can split a bit of that dead cap over 2 years. But Myles Garrett, Cleveland Browns, it seems like the end is nigh.
All right, so I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on when I think this opens up this, because it really, like you said, Jack, it really doesn't do anything for when Myles Garrett's here. This is not saving them cap space. It really does nothing for Myles Garrett. It gives him nothing. It actually takes some leverage probably away from him a little bit. He still does have that no trade clause, which I have a feeling if you presented him with a decent opportunity, Myles is fine with it. However, where I will disagree with you is this. I don't think this is for this year. I don't believe it's for this year. And the numbers kind of bear it out, because the Browns would still get slapped, not nearly the way they would have had they traded him after they paid him that bonus with the cap hit. They'd still get slapped with a pretty good one if they traded even this year. But I do think next year could be that time. I do think when you look at the numbers and what they would owe Myles Garrett, because this rolls over from year to year. This is the new structure to his contract, right? This means his option date every year is in September. I think this is more about next year. I don't think they're trading Myles Garrett this year. I think they're looking at maybe next year to say, hey, I want to say the number was like $15 million cap hit if they trade him next year. It's virtually nothing. And the other team would have to take on like $35 million to trade for him. So I just, for me, I don't know that it is imminently saying, hey, they're trading Myles Garrett this year, but I do think it's showing, hey, we want to keep that window open as long as possible. And we want to, for the Browns, like if this year goes down the tubes again and he's unhappy again and all that, they want to give themselves the leverage to do it without costing themselves a ton of money. Is that fair?
It certainly could be that they want to just give themselves options. My gut is this is coming more from Myles' side, and they're just going, hey, we'll comply and we'll get it done. And then there's an interesting debate around Denzel Ward as well. They could have easily restructured the whole of Denzel Ward's contract. Instead, they only did 2.5 million roster bonus that he was due. So if he wouldn't have done that, it'd have been 2.5 million straight on the salary cap. So it was kind of a point where they had to do it. They could have just easily done the rest of it, but they decided to only do 2.5 million of the 20 million. So it's one that there was no pressure to do it at that point, but also many times they'll just do the whole thing in one go. So it's just interesting that these things are going on where they could have just created that salary cap space. And unless they want to trade Myles Garrett and they went to him and said, we want to trade you, this is us opening up the door to it. I think Myles Garrett's probably wanting to be traded, and they're saying, let's give ourselves more of a freedom to do it. And after that time, they need more first round picks for next year. Go get your quarterback.
Can you does that have any, make it more appealing to another team to trade him besides what it does for the Browns? Like they could trade him with the idea, to get that first round pick or whatever, or just put it up for options like, hey, what will you give us for him, after they saw what the Ravens were going to give for Max Crosby, and saying, okay, because unless you were totally going to rebuild, I don't know how you can say you're winning on the fly, trading away the NFL's best player, unless you get a ransom.
Yeah, so a new team, if they trade for Myles Garrett, is going to be paying him just over $9 million on the salary cap this year. So they would take the full $32.5 million in cash, but it's only coming up just over $9 million on the salary cap. And for a team that wants to compete, it's in their interest to use the 2026 first round pick and then trade 27, 28 as a tandem, because they get more for the now, Browns get more for the long term. So it's certainly one that probably works in the favor of teams that do want to compete, rather than doing a trade now and they're having to give up 2026 assets.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the timing, you've already got the Browns petitioning the league to allow teams to trade out to 5 years worth of their draft picks. I think everybody blew up with, what does that mean for Myles Garrett? And then this comes through this restructure. So I think we don't know when. You've got your opinion. I think they're going to play this season out with Todd Monken. I feel like Todd Monken would be like, over my 60-year-old body, are you trading our best player in my first year? But I do think, I personally think they let this play out, but it opens up a window for them in the next couple of years. But certainly the main takeaway from this, Jack, is that whether it's this year or next year or whatever, this definitely makes a Myles Garrett trade financially much more feasible for the Cleveland Browns if and when they decide to do it.
Literally, I wrote the article yesterday because it's like, great, I don't need to talk about this anymore. It's consigned to the bin. It's just not a thing. Let's go and win, and try to put the best product on there. And the only reason to change anything to do with the deal is let's open a trade window. So I'm genuinely shocked this has happened. Like, if someone would have told me even a day ago, I'd be like, yeah, not happening. Really, really surprised to see the Browns do this.
Yeah, so it's much bigger story than maybe I would have just saw the tweet from Field Yates, because I'm like, well, we don't even really know what's the remodel or the restructure. I just assume it's something like they normally do to create more space. You're saying there's really nothing in it for that other than this bonus.
Yeah, 2029. Effectively, they've moved around some of the money in 2029, 2030, but they could have done that in 2029, in 2030. So for me, it's the only thing that I look at is what changes in the next 3 years. It's moving that date from late March to the start of September, which just says, hey, let's trade him. If you don't want to trade him, you're not moving that date. You're saying, hey, you're staying here. There's no reason to trade this. They have signaled that they're open for business, which I'm shocked about, because it changes the whole conversation about this team. Of I'm looking at what wide receivers we can add. Could we bring back a Joel Bitonio? Could we add a Taylor Decker? Could they add a bit more to try and get there? And instead, this changes completely other direction of like, I'm not looking at free agents anymore, because if they go and trade these two guys, potentially Ward, potentially Garrett, if it's just Garrett, the numbers are easier, but it's still a significant change. It's just fascinating. And you mentioned the clock's changing. A few people mentioned we're only got a 4-hour difference at the moment. On Sunday, we catch back up to you. There's like I think it's 2 weeks at this time of year, and 1 week at the other time of year where the clocks are slightly off.
Yeah, it's great catching up with you. It's not even midnight. We're talking to you on the same day.
It's rare, that is.
A Wednesday night for both of us.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Yeah, Jack, I appreciate you you coming on and yeah, again, it signals that the possibility is there for sure. Jack, while we've got you here, because we don't have you here often, what else are you looking at? You know, again, I feel like you've jumped on I think this means that they may be going into full rebuild. Again, I don't know that I feel it at this point, but what else structurally, contractually, what's going on this off season? What have you seen? Just what should we be talking about with the Browns and the contracts?
Yeah, so it's very much been business as usual. Lots more was made out of the Joel Bitonio stuff than it really means, because yes, they took the 23.5 million dead cap this year, but even if he was retiring, that 23.5 million dead cap just splits over 2 years. So the 12 million or whatever they would have saved this year, they'd have just rolled over and covered that number next year. So they're still on course that they can keep spending record amount of cash. This will take a slight balance out of it if they trade Myles, but it's a 1 year hit and then back to business as usual the year after. So it's not one that it builds constant issues. If they do trade down from sort of 6th to 12th, that then opens up a conversation of it's a significant reduction in salary cap. Talking about 12 million less that those two players are going to get paid in those two slots, which is pretty fascinating. But you move back 6 spots and you lose 12 million. So when players slide on draft night, that is a costly endeavor, just moving back a few spots. But it's one that I was looking at. Could we get a Marvin Harrison Jr.? Could we go and add more talent that? Because they need to add more receiving talent. But yeah, this is legit blew my mind. I'm genuinely shocked. I'm just like, everything I've been focused on for years of like, this is the way they operate. It's suddenly like, no, rebuild is welling.
Are you gonna sleep tonight is the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be delayed.
Contract things happen, man, and Jack doesn't sleep. He doesn't sleep.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't even know what. See, this just went over my head when I saw that about Garrett, and it's like, how many people were triggered by this like you, other than, does everybody know this? I mean,
no. It's the same way when Ronnie Hickman news came out. Mary Kay tweeted that he got a right of first refusal tender.
Yeah.
She wasn't even aware that she had broken the news because it went against what ESPN had reported, saying he was going to get a second round tender. So some of these stuff, even Mary Kay's breaking news without knowing she's breaking news. And it's one that the way Fields Yates wrote the article, it very much did not focus on the biggest change here is massive trade window just opened, where that's exactly the first thing I saw. I was just like, that is incredible change.
But again, I think it's all something everybody just needs to wait and see how it plays out too with this, because yes, it does certainly indicate that the Browns are giving themselves an opportunity to look at it. But I just saw this come in our chat. This was something I was thinking about before. The teams that are probably going to be willing to give up the farm for a guy like Myles Garrett are going to be the competitive teams. The better teams are going to be willing to say, like a Philly or the Rams or one of those kind of teams are going to be willing to say, yeah, I'll give you our next 3 first-round picks for Myles Garrett. But getting a first-round pick that's going to be number 29 in next year's draft and pairing it with a first-round pick from the Browns or whatever is not going to be enough to go up and get you a quarterback. Like it's not, that's not going to be the way this works. So I also think the Browns need to be, I think they will be pretty careful on how they operate and don't just assume. It's what drives me a little bit batty about all the, hey, trade away things for next year's things. Because one, you have no idea what's going to happen over the course of between now and next year's NFL draft. Because again, I will point out to everybody watching, we were all talking about a group of 4, 5, 6 quarterbacks from college football last year that were going to be first round, surefire. This was a much better year to need a quarterback. The Browns made the right move, which they did. But like, then we got to this year and there's one first round quarterback. There's just one. And we don't know what that's going to look like next year. So
I'm
I think it opens the door, but I want him to be careful about it.
Well, I'm thinking this, maybe this isn't accurate, but it gives them the flexibility that at the end of this year, things didn't work out like they thought, and it is. And now whoever's in the race for said quarterback, that's a pretty good blue chip. If that's something that can get me to the guy that I want to draft or whatever that you don't even know yet. Like I always said this with Garrett, you could say, okay, Garrett, let's trade him for a quarterback. How many teams out of 32 would you have to go down in ranking before you could get one-on-one Garrett for QB? I bet you they would be in the 20 to 25 range before somebody do that. Like that's just the way it is with quarterbacks. So I was just saying, if you had that piece that you could trade him, if that was the only way to make sure you got up and got whoever it was you were looking at quarterback. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think it's one where if you say there's 2 or 3 star quarterbacks next year, whatever it might be, the extra first round picks aren't going to help you trade in there unless you're talking about it's a team like a Bills, KC, maybe Mahomes gets injured in the preseason and then they just have a disaster season. No team that needs a quarterback is going to trade out of those top picks. So it's one that do you trade off a Myles Garrett and suddenly that 1-2 wins that he might give you over a season gets you an Arch Manning. Because the trouble is the Browns defense was too good last year to get that top pick. And we were only a couple of results at the end of the season away from the first overall pick, but it's unlikely to be something that you would luck into several times. They should have won more games than they did last year. There's no way of getting away from that. But it's one that if suddenly you move off of Myles Garrett, you move off of Denzel Ward, if Martin Emerson and the 6th overall pick is what replaces those 2 guys, well, I feel much better about getting the 1st or 2nd pick of the draft, and then you've got additional resources on top.
Yeah. All right, Jack. Well, listen, man, this has been very fun to have you jump in with us and just kind of break it down and explain it. And we had, I can't remember who it was in the past, but somebody wanted you in the comments to go full right here. Serge wants you to go full Orlovsky and just guarantee a Myles trade. I don't want you to do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Last year, I went as close as I could to guarantee it was just not going to happen. It wasn't until afterwards someone told me there was a betting market for it, because I would have been throwing so much money on the bookies that it was going to stay in Cleveland, because I would have made a significant sum of money, because I was like, I think you were giving it about plus 100, and I was like, I'd have literally been like max bet every day until they banned it. Whereas now I'm at let's call it 51% chance I think he's gone this year. That's how much that moves the stick for me.
You're a dad, man. You gotta be watching those bets. You're gonna be watching those bets.
It's free money. When it's Myles Garrett staying on the Browns in 2025, it's free money.
That's right. All right, Jack, everybody loved having you on. We see it in the comments. What a pleasure to have you on. Come back soon. 100%. It was awesome. Thank you for sending me the message and offering to come on. Get some sleep tonight, but obviously everybody make sure you're tuned in to Jack, because he'll continue breaking this down and all the other contract stuff for us. Nobody is better in the business at doing it for the Cleveland Browns than Jack Duffin. So, Jack, we appreciate you, buddy. Get a good night's sleep, and we'll talk to you later.
Keep up the great work,
Thanks,
guys.
Nick. Thank you,
hey, Jack.
Appreciate it.
Really interesting stuff. Really interesting. I don't I think Jack is. I think he probably puts it the right way. I think my optimist level, I got called out in the comments, and I know. I think my optimist level goes. I don't think they're trading the sack king reigning defensive player of the year, first year under Todd Monken, where you're actually hopeful that maybe your offense can come around a little bit under that coach. I think it would be very surprising to me. But I think Jack probably puts it better. He's like 50-50. He thinks it's 51. Certainly not saying he thinks it's 90, but it's an interesting window to open, Fred, and it's an interesting time to do it.
Yeah, it is. And you just think of the way it went last year when the guy embarrassed the Browns by saying how bad they were and I'm never coming back. And then, oh, okay, here's $240 million. I'm happy. What was your plan? They sold you. Oh, $240 million. That's it's hard for me to fathom that they really, that would be, if they on draft day trade him for a 27 pick or 28 or whatever it is, boy, that would be totally punting on the season to say, well, we might win too many games this year. We might be more competitive than we want to be. They'd never say that. It's hard for me to believe that, that's what they would be doing. It makes more sense to me at the end of the year. Let's say you are 3-14 or whatever, and you're like, wow, this isn't really helping. We need to go full throttle, on the quarterback going forward or whatever. But it just seems like if that's really the only reason they did it, as Jack says, then it's like it's got to just be giving you flexibility. So if somebody says, we'll give you the sun and the moon, okay, we can do it. Whereas if the sun and the moon was offered, you can't get out of it because you're stuck with, the dead cap and all that. So they're always looking for opportunities, to keep themselves in the game, so to say. It just concerns me as much as Jack is dialed in that this was keeping him up, almost like it's a game changer now. They've never done this kind of stuff before. So, it's really, obviously other people know about this. They'll get wind of it through Jack or whatever, and we'll see stories. He won't get credited with this, but I doubt if anybody has already written something about this.
I've seen a couple more national people write about it. One of the guys from OTC wrote a pretty good column about it. But no, Jack will have you tuned in as much as possible. Again, it's flexibility. It's just giving them more options. This did nothing positive or negative for Myles Garrett, other than it does delay when he gets paid. But really nothing negative for Myles Garrett or positive for him. And nothing negative or, again, as Jack tried to explain, nothing immediately positive as far as like cap space or anything. It does nothing for that. It just gives them a more feasible avenue if, like you said, Fred, if somebody comes to them and just says, we're going to give you everything for Myles Garrett, then they may need to listen to it. And they should. Yeah. And I don't love it. I don't love it because, again, I just find it very hard to be like, well, you want yourself set up. It's this prevailing theme amongst Browns people. You want to be set up in the 27 draft. You got to be set up in the 27 draft. We've done this year in and year out, time in and time again, where we want to be set up for the next draft and the next draft and the next draft. It doesn't. You have no idea who's going to be where in the next draft. You have no idea. Everybody's talking about Arch Manning. You don't even know if he's going to be there. You don't know if he's going to get hurt. You don't know if he's going to be
I've said this. Off. I know I've said this on our air a year ago, whether it was with you or Barry or whatever I was doing, but I've said this the last few years on that. I remember vividly a guy named Matt Barkley. He was at USC, and he was the sure shot number one pick the next year, they said, and he didn't come out for the draft. The next year, you didn't even remember who he was. He got picked in the 4th round by the Eagles, and he never really did anything in the NFL.
Right.
And this time last year, was Francisco Mendoza even on the radar? I mean,
No,
I never
Fred.
heard of the guy.
No, Fred. We were talking
And
about Nutzmeyer and Aller and Klubnik, and we were like, these are got a first round.
Lenora Sellers,
None of them are going in the first round.
Arch Manning, all those things. And so to the point, yes, this time last year, 26, man, when you're getting that extra number 1, there's going to be, I heard 6 to 8 first round quarterbacks. And we might only have 1. There's only 1 being talked about. And it was just like last year, it seemed like you really had a 1 quarterback draft. I mean, Jackson Dart, the Giants traded up for him, but that's what you feel like again this year. And unless you are full-blown tanking like they were under Hugh Jackson when everybody knew what the plan was, and it's proven that doesn't really work, I don't know how you can even plan, because you win 2 or 3 games, it might be a 1 quarterback draft again, and then how long are you going to do that?
Right.
And just like Jack said, unless a sure shot team is in the top 5 that doesn't need a quarterback and they're just there because their quarterback blew out his knee in the first game,
right,
they're going to take a quarterback. That's just what happens. And
think about the Raiders this year. Like, let's say the Browns had 3 first round picks this year, and they called the Raiders and said, "Hey, we'll give you 3 first rounders this year for Mendoza for number 1 overall." Do you think the Raiders are doing it? Hell no. No, they're not.
And last year, the Browns had the number 2 pick. If they really were all in on Cam Ward, they had an extra 1 pick, and they couldn't budge that pick from Tennessee, whether they'll be proven right in the long term. So yeah, you're absolutely right. There's no way you can predict. If you knew for sure there was even a guaranteed Hall of Fame quarterback going to be the top quarterback available in 27, forget the name right now. You're just guaranteed he's a Hall of Famer. There's no guarantee you can get to number 1 unless you just automatically try to lose every game.
It all goes back to that old adage, right? A bird in the hand worth 2 in the bush. And I think sometimes people lose track of that. People love talking about future picks. And again, I'm seeing it so much with the Browns this year, Fred, and the way people talk about it. The Browns have 3 the Browns have 3 picks in the top 40. You have 3 opportunities to grab top 40 players. I don't know who they're going to grab, but you got 3
under contract for 5 years.
3 cracks
at a reduced rate.
3 cracks at top 40 picks. And so for everybody that's sitting here going, "Oh, they should trade this for future picks and this for future." Man, I got 3 cracks at top 40 players. I'm going to take my 3 cracks. I'm going to build my team. And if I need to figure, again, the NFL continues to show you that, yes, if you can get Joe Burrow, or if you can get that top guy in the draft because you were that bad the year before, okay. But the NFL continues to show you that that isn't just the recipe to succeed. That isn't just the only recipe. Look at the teams winning Super Bowls. Actually, those top picks are not winning Super Bowls. It's Sam Darnold just won a Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes wasn't a top pick. I mean, he was a top 10 pick, but he wasn't. Mitch Trubisky was ahead of Patrick Mahomes. You go down Jalen Hurts, go down the list of these guys. The NFL continues to show you that if you can just get a good quarterback, a good one, and build a whole kick-ass team around him, pardon my language, then you can win Super Bowls. So this idea that we can sacrifice building the rest of the roster just because we want Arch Manning. Arch Manning guarantees you nothing, even if he's good. Build your roster. do what you can do to build the best team. And if you got to go figure out a quarterback because Shedeur Sanders is really bad this year, or because I don't want to say his name, Voldemort of the Browns, it plays or whatever, then they'll figure it out. Then they'll figure it out.
Well, and that's where it just makes no sense to me to like Jack said, they literally could be considering rebuild. It just doesn't seem like the right time to be doing that, you know. As I said, if you got the defense, why take the strength of your team and make it average? And you look at the proposal I had, the best player in your team is Myles Garrett, but you've seen what's happened with him. Why not put all efforts into acquiring that quarterback wherever that comes from? There's no guarantee, but if that would be a chip in a trade, that would be, I could justify it, because like the example I said, I've thought of that often. They always talk about how great Myles is, but you couldn't trade even up Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, go down every quarterback starter for a team. I bet you wouldn't get into the 20s to low 20s before somebody'd say, yeah, we'll trade you even up our quarterback for Myles Garrett. I don't know if it'd be the Baker Mayfield, that area, or even lower than that.
No. Tampa would 100% do that.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. And so everybody'd say, well, Myles is 10 times better than Baker Mayfield, but it's the position. And so that's where, if that could be something that could get it over the top to make that move. But other than that, I don't see what it accomplishes to trade Myles, to, as you said, to trade him to a Super Bowl contender and get, I don't care if they give you 5 first-round picks in there, but they're drafting 30, 31, or 32. Those are just dart throws to me. How many guys drafted 30, 31, 32 even make an impact? Unless, I mean, Lamar Jackson did, but when you go through it, you got to pick and choose. You can go through all oh yeah, that one. Oh yeah. But it's proven the top picks, even at quarterback, the majority are in the first round and the majority are in the top 10.
Well, I think it's very, like I'm sitting here trying to think. I'm trying to think of like the now version of Matthew Stafford, a guy that's just a perennial top end quarterback, Pro Bowl. I shouldn't even say Pro Bowl because
Jared Goff.
But what I mean is, I'm trying to think of that Matt Stafford type guy who ran his course with a team, and it was just very clear that there were fresh starts needed on both sides, right? I just don't know who that is. And it's hard to say because I don't know. I don't follow contracts for other teams the way that we get contracts. Basically, contract information is handed to us by somebody like Jack Duffin here in Cleveland. But I know a lot of talk surrounded Jalen Hurts. I don't want to trade Myles Garrett for Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts would be far and away the best quarterback on our roster. I don't want to trade Myles Garrett for him. Lamar Jackson came into my head, honestly, Fred, because new regime, new coaches, maybe they want a new look at quarterback. Maybe Todd Monken loves Lamar Jackson. I'm not seeing that guy where I'm like, well, that's the level of quarterback that I feel like they're going to go win a Super Bowl. And I know Jalen Hurts has, and I know Lamar has made his runs, but like for Myles Garrett, no, I'm not real thrilled about it. So again, I do not mind the fact, having said all that, I do not mind the fact that they've opened up something that gives them options. I do not mind that. And if some team comes in and says, we're going to absolutely knock your socks off with a deal, and the Browns are like, well, we have to take this. All right, cool. Go for it. But otherwise, I think this just opens up options. I think it opens up options next year. If this year goes haywire and Myles Garrett says again he wants out or whatever, they've given themselves options. And that's all you can ask for, right?
Yeah, I always say, how does it make you better? like with any trade or whatever, how does this make the team better? And it just, I'm tired of the taking 2 steps back,
Yes.
and
To hope that you
oh
can take a step forward.
yeah, and it just doesn't. So again, it was kind of like I retweeted the Fields Yates report just because I'm like, yeah, it's something about Myles Garrett, but it was kind of a yawner. I didn't know that it was setting off, putting Jack over the limit where he can't sleep now over in London. I feel bad for him because
Well,
that kind of keeps him up at night, I think.
nobody, nobody geeks out about things like contract news, like Jack Duffin, and that's why we're lucky to have him on the OBR. So, anyways, it'll just be something for us to keep an eye on. Part of me thinks it's exhausting already. Like we're gonna have to listen to it about Myles Garrett again because every time something happens, it's gonna be the first thing that people. Oh well, they're gonna trade Myles Garrett now, and it's like, well, maybe something weird comes up in at the draft or some. I don't know, but like, I don't know. We got asked what the minimum would be. I don't know. Yeah, do the Raiders want to trade Max Crosby plus the number 1 pick for Myles Garrett? I suppose I would be interested in that. I suppose I'd get interested in that. But again, just news that could do something for the future. Fred, again, we're about a month away from the NFL draft. It's happening in Pittsburgh. We're going to go over ad nauseum the draft. I think we're actually going to try to get some draft guests before the draft happens for the Browns. We've talked about wide receivers and offensive linemen. I'm starting to get the feeling, Fred. I've got a couple questions for you, though. I'm starting to get the feeling, just the gut feeling, and maybe the Andrew Berry feeling, that again we're all just playing the fan game, and Andrew Berry isn't. And what I mean by that is we're all sitting here talking about very specific things that we want the Browns to address. But it is not going to surprise me in the slightest if the Browns do not take an offensive lineman or a wide receiver at number 6 or 24 or 39. I think you saw it last year with the way that played out, taking a linebacker and a running back in the second round, taking a defensive tackle in the first round. When everybody was screaming about the offense, I think Andrew Berry's the type that wants to just get the best players in the draft. And I think he views the draft as a chance to just take swings at home runs, to go back to our baseball references from earlier, and try to hit on big-time players that can become big-time players on small-time contracts for a while. It's not going to surprise me if they do not do what the people think they're going to do.
No, I still, a month out, think they're going to trade down. I think that it worked out so well last year that that's going to be, a possibility that he might say, if I can get, I don't know what, you get from 6 to going to 9 or 10 or something. I don't think you want to go too far, so you can still get one of those blue chip players. But adding another pick in the top 40, might, you trade that 6 and 70 or something, and maybe you can get another pick a little higher or a little lower in the first round, but then higher up in the second round, something like that. But I'm intrigued with, like we said before, if you're sold that Caleb Downs, I mean, they're already talking today, like showing John Harbaugh says he's a Hall of Fame or a gold jacket player, already kind of anointing him. And if you think he's that Ed Reed type player, you take the guy if he's there. You don't pass him. But all things being equal, I think you got to address your need area. I think it ties in a little to Downs from the aspect of, I wanted to see what you thought with the Ronnie Hickman. I was going to ask Jack this. Why do you think they would only give right of first refusal? Because he's in the contract year. So does it mean like we don't want to be locked into him if we take another safety? I don't know, that you got an undrafted rookie free agent. He made the team, became a starter. You'd think you would say, holy moly, we got the best of that world, but you're willing to let a team take him, like they let a team sign Diabate, and he started last year. So I thought, I didn't understand why they didn't at least do the right of first refusal or something. I don't know what it hurts you. So
in my
anyway,
opinion, Fred, those guys are okay. Diabate, okay player. He was an okay player. Ronnie Hickman is an okay player. He's viewed in better light because he's undrafted and because nobody selected him and because the Browns brought him in and he wound up being a viable NFL player. But he's not irreplaceable,
right?
By any stretch. He's put it this way: if you drafted Ronnie Hickman in the third round, you probably would feel very differently. And I'm not trying to put down Ronnie Hickman. I think what he has accomplished is admirable. And I don't want to see him go play somewhere else. I would like to see Ronnie Hickman continue playing for the Cleveland Browns, but I do think you'd view him in a little bit of a different light if he was drafted in the third round or the second round or something like that. And then he played the way that he has, as opposed to, oh my gosh, this guy is undrafted and he like can hold his own out there. That's pretty awesome. I think there's just going to be those kind of guys that,
Yeah.
I think, no offense to Ronnie Hickman. I just feel like you can go find another Ronnie Hickman.
I remember back during that.
Diabate.
I remember being with you during that draft, and you said keep your eye on Hickman. The Browns like him, and there was talk maybe in the 5th round, and then they ended up taking him or getting him as an undrafted guy. But when we're sitting here right now, you've looked at the draft a little more in depth because I know some of the stuff you're doing. Do you think if say they can't make a trade, everything stays the way it is, 6 and 24, are you better off taking a wide receiver first and then being able to get a better tackle at 24 versus flip-flopping it around? Or is it about the same? The wide receivers that probably will be there at 24 are the equivalent of an offensive tackle that you would have taken at 24.
So for me, in this draft, I think the top end wide receivers, and I think there are 3 of them, although Tyson comes in and out of question. I honestly think Tyson's the best wide receiver out of all 3 of them. The most dynamic. He's just the one with the most significant question, which is the injury issues. I think Pete Smith's comp for Mekhi Lemon of Amon-Ra St. Brown is so spot on. Mekhi Lemon, I think he dropped a pass. And this is a guy that was like counted on to be going up and getting deep balls and like coming down with things in traffic and all. Like, oh my gosh, the kid's special. And obviously, we've all seen what Tate's done at Ohio State. And I think the knock on him of not being the team's number 1 is stupid because Ohio State has had there's a lot of these guys making big names for themselves in the NFL right now that weren't number 1s at Ohio State. There's a lot of guys that played with Marvin Harrison that weren't the number 1 guy because Marvin Harrison was. There's guys that played with Garrett Wilson that weren't the number 1 guy because Garrett Wilson was. But man, oh man, do they look like real good players in the NFL. So in my opinion, when I look at the way, here's the thing, Fred, look at wide receivers this offseason. Your option is either to dramatically overpay somebody. I mean, Alec Pierce's contract, we talk about like contracts and numbers keeping Jack up at night. If I was an Indianapolis Colts fan, that Alec Pierce contract would keep me up at night, but only in a bad way. I have no idea why you would pay him $28-29 million a year. I have no idea what that is. Yep. So when I look at the process of trying to acquire a wide receiver, again, I know we've seen Andrew Berry give up a 5th rounder for Amari Cooper and give up a late rounder for Jerry Jeudy, and he kind of has a knack for that. But you have to dramatically overpay for wide receivers. Dramatically. And I've said it on this show over and over again, Fred. that you can make a great offensive line with really good offensive linemen. You do not need 5 great offensive linemen to have a great offensive line. And so for me, if that was the choice, if you were saying, hey, we're either taking an offensive lineman or we're taking a wide receiver at 6, I'm going to get one of those 3 wide receivers because I'm going to get a top end guy. I'm going to have him on a rookie deal for a while before he's going to have to demand to get paid. And we're going to make use out of that because I can go get one of these. I think it's a deeper. The depth at wide receiver is pretty good, but I think that next level of guys is the next level of guys where I think you could get a starting caliber tackle at 24 or even 39. And I think too many people, Fred, and I'll throw a question. Well, here, I'll let you respond to that, and then I'll throw a question back at you.
Well, I tend to agree is that you need, especially you haven't come out of no trade today, doesn't mean, that you couldn't come out with one, but free agency is a waste of time at this point. I thought maybe a second wave, not the top guys because they are overpaid so much. That's why it seems to me the wide receiver is such a way to go because you lock them in, especially if you take them in the first round for 5 years. You have in effect, right. I'm not saying they're this level, but you have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins for 5 years if you use their 6 and 24 on them.
Right.
And 39 on the tackle. I'm not totally saying that's the way to go, but use 6 at the wide receiver, Lemon Tate, and, take the tackle if there's really the one that you really like. But then at 39, take another one. If there's still one of those 6 or 7 available there, because it's almost impossible to get a wide receiver, in the free agency because of the cost. Teams won't let them go. And if they do, you get the Alec Pierce and he didn't even get to the market. And they said they put the gun to, and we'll give you $29 million. So I agree with that. I don't think the tackles, now their left tackles get big money, but I haven't looked. I was going to look at their contracts. I don't think they're as high as the wide receivers, at this point yet. So that's my 2 cents. Take the wide receiver, whoever you think's the best, all things being equal, and 2 out of the 3 first picks should be wide receivers.
Oh, and here's the other thing, Fred. And this is a thing that I want people to really pay attention to, because I think people get way too caught up when we're talking about tackles. I think people get way too caught up on where tackles played in college. I think people get way too caught up on, that guy was a right tackle in college. He can't come in and be a left tackle. Yes, they can. You cannot in one breath say that you want you are mad that the Browns drafted Jedrick Wills over Tristan Wirfs, and then say, well, I don't want this guy because he's a right tackle in college. Well, Tristan Wirfs was a right tackle in college. And it happens all the time. A guy that played left tackle in college comes to the NFL to play right tackle. A guy that played right tackle in college comes to the NFL to play left tackle. So I don't really want to hear about the fact that you think Spencer Fano can only play right tackle. The guy's a freak. I don't want to hear that. I always forget how to say his name, but Max Hinachor, I think is how you say it. The kid out of Arizona State. Oh, he's Blake Miller out of Clemson. Oh, those guys are right tackles. Absolutely not. Those guys can play right tackle, left tackle. Those guys can play on either side. And again, it's not everybody. And there's certainly guys that maybe are more comfortable on one side or the other. But I wouldn't get all caught up in that. So, I saw this question come in. Who is the offensive tackle that would be available at 39? Maybe some of those guys. Maybe the star of the Senior Bowl, Jennings Dunker from Iowa. Man, the guy was the star of the Senior Bowl. Not that that's the end all, but he's a pretty good player. Again, Blake Miller might be there at 39. Max Hinachor might be there at 39. He might also go in the middle of the first round. So we don't know. We have no idea who's going to be there. But again, Fred, it just always gets me a little worked up when people are like, oh, no, he's only a right tackle. Like, that's not how it works. If they evaluate a guy to be a good tackle, they think he's good at right tackle, they may also think he's good at left tackle, and he can do that. And we see it play out all the time.
Well, yeah, and the same thing with taking a tackle from Alabama. You can't say because Jedrick Wills,
Right.
because Proctor, oh, well, he's from Alabama and they haven't produced tackles, so. But I do think, all things being equal, I kind of like those Iowa tackles or guards or Penn State. They seem Buckeyes, different ones like that in the Big Ten. But who knows? I just think that, I just think you got to get some help and not take wide receivers in the third round or lower. That's all that Andrew Berry's done, and they're, you get what you pay for, so to say.
Yeah. 100%. I'm with you. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see again. Obviously, the Browns shook things up right before the show tonight, so we had to get Jack in here to talk about what their restructuring of Myles Garrett's contract means. It gives us something to think about all off season long. As far as, is this going to actually come into play for the Browns, or is this just a thing that's open? But again, Fred, we're about a month away from the draft, so there's going to be a lot more discussion. I do think it'll be very interesting do you know when's the next time we anticipate hearing from the Browns? Do you know, Fred?
Well, April 6th, the Browns can start OTA. So once that starts, they usually have availability one day a week. Now, I don't know if the first 2 weeks, they're outside or anything like that, but I'd have to look at my calendar to see if they did interviews. But I would think that, I'm pretty sure that we had availability when, like, even the first week, the coach talked to us on how it was going and so forth, even though we couldn't see practices or anything, or they weren't practicing. So the general manager has to do a pre-draft, session with the media. So I expect it to be in the first 2 weeks of April. So it probably wouldn't be, probably not next week, but the following week we should get some information.
Well, it'll be interesting to hear what they say about the Myles Garrett restructure. But, stick with us as we get towards the draft. Fred's been working a little bit in the background. We're going to try to get some people on to talk some actual draft prospects and how they see things going when the draft finally kicks off in Pittsburgh at the end of April. And obviously, we'll be with you every week, every Wednesday night up until then, so that we can talk about whatever breaking Browns news there is, and get you prepped for that, and then get you prepped for when the offseason starts and these guys start making plays out on the practice field as we push towards next season. So that's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Browns Beat. We really appreciate, Jack Duffin coming on from London. Again, only 4 hours ahead, so he managed to get it in on Wednesday his time to talk to us about the Myles restructure. Want to give a big thank you to the OBR for hosting us. Get over to the OBR.com and make sure you hit subscribe so you can be a part of the oldest, largest independent Browns coverage site in all of Cleveland. And our biggest thank you, as always, goes out to all of you. The comments were great tonight. Glad everybody joined us. Remember, you can always catch us later on either YouTube or Twitch if you can't catch us live, or you can listen to the OBR podcast, and you can catch us there as well. But that'll do it for this episode of Inside the Browns Beat. He is Fred Greetham. I am Michael Keefe. We'll see you next week. But until then, as always, go Browns.
Thanks, everybody. Go back and check Jack out. He had some great stuff earlier in the show.